This is the BlackView Tab 18, and it comes equipped with a massive, stunning 12-inch screen and the Helio G99 system on chip. That's the same chip as the KT R1 Retro handheld, and it offers incredible gaming performance, including enough power to play a host of Gamecube and even some PS2 games. Just take a look at this quick montage. In addition to this impressive performance, the Tab 18 has 12GB of RAM, virtually expandable to 24GB, 256GB of onboard storage which is also expandable via an SD card slot, dual SIM card slots for 4G connectivity, quad Harman Kardon stereo speakers, a humongous 8800 mAh battery with 33W fast charging, and an impressive boatload more hardware and software features that make gaming and general tablet use a really great experience on this device. The tablet launches on the 11th of November 2023 at an incredibly competitive price of just around $200 US. In my opinion, tablets are one of the best, most underrated way to play both retro and modern games these days, and the Tab 18 from BlackView is absolutely no exception. Gaming on this thing is an absolute joy, thanks to its admirable performance and stunning 12-inch, 11.97-inch, 2000 by 1200 5:3 aspect ratio display. Yes, 5:3. The screen itself is absolutely stunning from the moment you get it out of the box, with great viewing angles and colors. In fact, the color profile can even be adjusted in the settings, and is very vibrant when set to the color mode. 1080p, 2K, and even 4K content look absolutely great on this device. Now I'm going to get right into the gaming showcase in just a moment, but for now let's take a look at the device itself. The box is very Apple-like, as you might expect, and the box includes a tempered glass screen protector, a folio case, a charger, a SIM tool, a USB-C cable, and a USB-C pair of headphones. Here's the Tab 18 itself. It is really big, but it also feels pretty compact. The bezels around the edges of the screen are small and uniform all the way around. And my first reservation on this device were the rounded corners on the screen. Personally, I'm just not a huge fan of rounded corners, but I definitely understand why they went with them on this device, because it gives the whole thing a kind of uniform, symmetrical look. The weight of the tablet is 632 grams, which for such a big tablet is not very much at all. It's 7.9mm thin, which at this point is actually thinner than my phone. It's 277.6mm wide and 173.2mm tall. And so despite this compact size, I should mention that the camera bump adds maybe a millimeter or two to the overall thickness. But it doesn't jut out too much, that's for sure. It's really great though that you get the screen protector in the box, because that's just a little less money you need to spend on top of the device. And you also get this really nice leather effect case. Something I should definitely mention is you do have the option to buy this tablet with an additional keyboard. Now at this time it's not available, so I couldn't get one to review for this video, but I think given what I'm going to go through for the rest of this video with this tablet, I will definitely be buying one of those myself to add to it. And the last thing I want to mention before we get into the games is that this tablet also has a pressure sensitive touch display, and so when you buy BlackView's new S Pen Gen 2, you get a full pressure sensitive display with 4096 levels of pressure. For any artists and illustrators out there, this is basically like having a Wacom tablet built in. Again, this pen isn't available at the time that I'm making this video, but as soon as it is, I'll be picking one up. They've even told me that it will magnet to the top of the device, which is really cool. And as we'll see shortly, tablets are amazing for Nintendo DS, and I'm really looking forward to trying it out on this device. So I'm not going to hold you any longer, let's talk about some games, starting with some Android native gaming. And first we're going to look at Vampire Survivors. This was actually my first time playing this game, and I gotta say I'm basically addicted already. And this is a really simple 2D game, but I think it really benefits from this massive screen area, because you can always see what's coming at you and you can kind of think ahead to your next move in ways you might not be able to on a smaller screen. so the Tab 18 really is perfect for this game. Next we'll take a quick look at Ravensword Shadowlands, but only because I love this game. It's basically like an Android version of Skyrim. It's a really old game dating back to about 2012 or so, but it still runs great today, and it looks great too. The Tab 18 has no issues running this game whatsoever. Next up we have Mario Kart Tour. I've never played this game before myself, but it seems to be pretty fun and it works perfectly on the Tab 18, with a huge game area. You'll definitely want to hold the tablet in one hand and use your other hand to control the game. Next up is Monster Hunter Stories. You can actually buy the full game of Monster Hunter Stories on Android, and it's an amazing version of the game. And on the Tab 18, even with the graphics settings set to the maximum, this game runs at 60 frames a second locked and looks absolutely fabulous. The colors especially really pop on this big display. And for something a little more retro, we have Titan Quest. This is the definition of an old school top-down RPG, and it is just fantastic on this device. Again, it's one of those games where having this giant screen just lets you see and think ahead more. And I really love that you can see all the graphics and the character models up close where you might not be able to on a different device. And again, with all the graphic settings maxed out, it runs flawlessly. Now onto a newer game called Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. And I'm not going to comment on what I think about this game, but at medium settings it runs absolutely perfectly, and it looks truly next generation. I can't believe we can get graphics like this on an Android device, let alone a budget Android device. It's truly stunning. And I know that a lot of people watching this video are going to want to know about Genshin Impact, and I'll say it runs really well on this device. I did put all the settings to low, but I turned anti-aliasing on, and that meant that I got really nice smooth graphics and smooth gameplay as well. Honestly, I cannot complain about this at all. This is a massive step up from the last BlackView tablet I tested, where Genshin was barely playable at all. And finally I tested out Call of Duty Mobile. To begin with, I set the settings to medium and the game ran absolutely great. There were a couple of hiccups here and there, but nothing that was game breaking and nothing that got in the way of my overall enjoyment. However, after that I changed the settings down to low, but again I set the anti-aliasing to full, and with that setup the graphics look absolutely fantastic, and there's absolutely no lag and the game runs at a full 60 frames a second with no issues whatsoever. And again, this full 3D, high intensity action game has no issues running on this tablet. It's really impressive. Oh, and I did jump into some Warzone as well. And even with this giant map and the skydiving stuff, everything ran perfectly smoothly. I'm really impressed with Android gaming on this tablet. But now it's time to shift gears and look into emulation. And for low-end 2D systems, the Tab 18 has absolutely no problem playing basically anything. This device and its Helio G99 has more than enough power to play all of your retro games, and even to add a shader or two here and there. But what sets this device apart really is the screen. It's a 5:3 aspect ratio, and that makes it absolutely ideal for basically anything. So for 4:3 content, such as the Sega Mega Drive, you'll get a massive and almost full screen game area, thanks to this aspect ratio. And the game area has a 10-inch diagonal. That's a huge screen. Game Boy Advance also fills out nearly the entire screen, and the game area is 11 inches. For 1+1 color, you're going to get 11¼ inches of game area. And for 16:9 content like PSP or Dreamcast set to widescreen, you're going to get practically a full screen experience with about a 12-inch diagonal. This is literally the perfect tablet for retro gaming, because nearly all retro systems fill out 90% of the screen and look pixel perfect. It's an absolutely fantastic display. And this is part of why I say that tablets are such an underrated way to play retro games. And with this G99 under the hood, there's a lot more to look at. Starting with PlayStation 1, you can upscale everything to the enhanced resolution in the PCSX rearmed core and RetroArch. You can also set the games to widescreen if you want to, but like I said, they look amazing in 4:3. PS1 is on lock with this device. With N64, basically everything runs at 1080p at full speed. For the really heavy games, something like GoldenEye, you might need to lower it down to 720p. But it still looks fantastic, and 720 locks in all games. With the Sega Dreamcast, you can easily upscale to 1080p for the vast majority of titles, and again, lower it down to 720 if you have any issues. But for the most part, Dreamcast is pick up and play on this device at 1080p. Even Sonic Adventure 2 has absolutely no slowdown whatsoever. and it really looks fantastic on this display. Sega Saturn is a little bit of a weird one because it took me a while to get it running, but with the correct settings in the Yaba Sanshiro 2 app, I was able to play every single game at its native resolution. Now, I've actually forgot to test this in higher resolutions because I just don't really care that much about upscaling Saturn. I think it looks much better in its old blocky form. And next up, let's look at PSP, which is just amazingly cinematic on this device. And of course, we're going to start with God of War. With this game, you can set it to 3x resolution and turn on auto frame skip, and you'll get a really smooth experience, hovering around 60 frames a second, sometimes dipping around to 50. But you won't really notice it because of that frame skipping. Or you can lower the resolution down to 2x and get a solid 60 without frame skip. Either way, it looks fantastic. And God of War is really the outlier here because every single other game on this device ran at full speed at 1080p. In fact, most games can hit a 6 times resolution before they start slowing down. I'm pretty sure that's actually over the 2.4K resolution of the screen, and the games all still run perfectly. And so now let's talk about Nintendo DS. If you've watched my previous Tab 12 Pro review, you'll know that I thought that Nintendo DS was absolutely fantastic on that device, because it was basically a gigantic DS. While this device is like an even bigger, amazing DS, DS games are perfect on it. The difference, of course, being a much bigger screen. So with your DS games in the horizontal layout, you'll get a 6.5-inch play area for each display. If you have a large screen and a small screen, the big screen is going to have a 10.25-inch game area. And if you have your devices in a vertical orientation, each screen is going to have 7.5 of game area. And again, you can slap on a red back controller and use the stylus to play these games in vertical orientation, and they're just absolutely fantastic. In fact, I'm assuming that when the magnetic S Pen comes out from BlackView, it will be an even better experience. I really can't wait for it. So now let's take a look at the big hitters, starting with Gamecube. Many Gamecube games run really well on this device. For example, Sonic Heroes at a 720p resolution runs a locked 60 frames a second. Or you can hit 1080p if you're willing to accept a little bit of stuttering here or there. Soul Calibur 2 is also 60 frames a second locked at 720p and looks fantastic. And Mario Kart Double Dash is the same story, 60 frames a second at 720p. A game I didn't have much luck with on GameCube was Super Mario Sunshine. At native resolution with a bunch of tweaks and hacks, I was able to get it to run somewhere between 20 and 30 FPS. But it was still pretty slow and glitchy. Perhaps using some tweaks or the Dolphin MMGR version of the emulator, we might get better results, but this is what I saw for now. To be honest, I think that any GameCube running on this device is really surprising, so I'm just happy to see any at all. And Sonic Heroes is always a real joy to play on a handheld, or a tablet in this case. Now let's talk about PlayStation 2. And PS2 performance on this device is kind of spotty, because some games are absolutely perfect, whereas other games like Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy VII are completely unplayable. I think really you just have to hunt around for the games that are gonna work. I found Monster Hunter played at 1080p absolutely perfectly at full speed. And then The Lord of the Rings The Two Towers played perfectly but only at native resolution. But I was really happy to see that even when there were tons of enemies on screen, it still ran at full speed. I really wish that they would remaster this series, but given all the likeness of the characters and the movie clips that are in the games, I doubt that'll ever happen. But the standout game on PS2 on this device is Kingdom Hearts. This game runs absolutely perfectly at a 1080p resolution. Usually I don't really get past the dream sequence at the beginning because I've just played it too many times. But this time I've got well into the game and it's absolutely perfect at 1080p. It looks absolutely stunning on the screen with its beautiful vibrant colors and large game area. And in fact, even if you upscale it to 2K resolution, it still runs perfectly 90% of the time. I actually think I'm going to give this game a full playthrough on the Tab 18, it is that good and that much fun. And just like GameCube, it's really impressive to see anything PS2 running on this device, let alone some things running this well. And when it comes to Nintendo 3DS, performance is again a little spotty. Some games run perfectly, albeit after a little caching, such as Sonic Generations. In fact, this game would run at 4x resolution, no problem at all. On the other hand, Super Mario 3D Land at native resolution struggled to keep a consistent 30, but it's not exactly unplayable either. Another game that ran absolutely perfect, this time at 2x resolution, was Final Fantasy Explorers, one of my favorite 3DS games. The biggest issue with 3DS emulation in my opinion is caching. Because, for example, in Sonic Generations, the first time I ran through a level, it would be really slow and clunky and laggy. But I can go into the same level again and run it at full speed. I hope the improvements to 3DS on Android will come in the future because it's still kind of a spotty experience overall. But there's definitely some games that you'll be able to find that run really well. And I'm no longer going to forget to talk about PlayStation Vita. Vita emulation has come along so far, I still can't believe it. And the G99 is no slouch when it comes to Vita. I could play Freedom Wars, one of my favorite games, at 1080p upscaled resolution and it ran pretty much perfect. I also tried some PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, and I went into this thinking that this game would not work at all. But instead, other than a little bit of lagginess here and there, it's really not that bad. There are, however, some compatibility issues between the Vita 3K emulator and the Helio G99 chip, and this can range from rough textures to completely broken graphics. A prime example being Jump Victory Versus. This game runs at absolutely flawless full speed, but there are no character models, which makes it unplayable. On the other hand, some games run completely perfect, such as Muramasa Rebirth. I think we're really getting to the point with the Helio G99 and PS Vita that most of the issues left are going to be compatibility, not performance. And I was blown away by the performance I did get here. And finally, if you're a fan of Nintendo's more recent handheld console hybrid, you might be amazed to hear that you can actually stretch the Tab 18 to some emulated Suika game as well. And even some other simple games, such as Hollow Knight, run perfectly too. When it comes to heavier 3D titles, you're pretty much out of luck. For example, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee ran at a crawl and then crashed before it got into the game. But I was again shocked that any of this console would work on here at all. And if there's a simple 2D game that you really like on this console, you might be able to emulate it here on the Tab 18. It's worth mentioning that the 12GB of RAM on this device is going to come in very handy for emulating this console in particular. Whether the chipset and the CPU itself can keep up is another story, but again, I'm just super impressed. So that rounds out this emulation showcase on the Tab 18. The Helio G99 chipset is kind of like the top end of the budget or mid-range market. And whereas it might not fetch you AAA graphics in native games, or full Gamecube and PS2 gameplay, it is an incredibly good performer nonetheless. The chip easily locks in Dreamcast, PSP, and anything below that at basically perfect levels. And also the device doesn't get hot either. In fact, it seems like BlackView did an amazing job with its thermals, because this device never even gets warm in the hands. And I couldn't detect even a smidge of thermal throttling no matter what I threw at this device. It's seriously impressive. There's one more thing I want to touch on when it comes to gaming, and that is Moonlight Streaming. Or I suppose any kind of streaming. The Wi-Fi performance of the Tab 18 is basically flawless. And on top of that, this screen size is getting really close to kind of like a small monitor or a laptop. And it's absolutely fantastic to prop this device up, connect a wireless controller, and just play some PC games. I had a ton of fun playing Sonic Superstars this way, and I think that this big 12-inch screen is much better suited to PC gaming than typical PC gaming handhelds. So outside of gaming, the performance in general of this tablet is just really good. For your general home tasks like browsing the internet, social media, watching videos, and stuff like that, it's absolutely flawless, and I don't think you'll ever find yourself wanting more performance. The 12GB of RAM keeps everything running very quickly, and you can snap between different apps and different tasks at a moment's notice. In fact, there were times when I was testing extremely heavy emulating tasks, such as on Nintendo's hybrid handheld, where the entire device would be crawling, but that didn't mean I couldn't just swipe up from the bottom of the screen and get into the task manager instantly. It is incredibly impressive the way that this RAM and the processor is put to use here. So now let's move on and talk about a few of the various features of the Tab 18. First of all, it has quad stereo speakers designed by Harman Kardon, and the speakers are noticeably fantastic. They sound absolutely brilliant, and they especially have a really good stereo effect. Although when you hold the tablet in portrait mode, you get top and bottom firing speakers, and it's kinda strange, but it's not really a big deal. Overall, the speakers are way better than you might expect from a tablet at this price point. There's even a cleaning function built into the OS that will play a sound to clean out dust from the speaker holes. And when it comes to audio, there's only really one problem with this device, and that's that it does not have a 3.5mm headphone jack, which is just kind of a shame of an omission. But you do get some USB-C headphones in the box. However, I think it would have been much more useful to get a USB-C to 3.5mm adapter instead. Also, this tablet has cameras. There's a 16-megapixel camera on the back and an 8-megapixel camera on the front. Now, I'm not one of the elusive tablet photographers you see out in the wild, and neither should you be. However, I will say that this tablet does have a pretty good camera, and I found that the images it produces are pretty sharp and pretty detailed, at least when you're in good lighting. If you really know your stuff about cameras and photography, you're probably not going to think it's great, but in my opinion it works perfectly. The front-facing camera is definitely more than enough for video calling, and the camera on the back is definitely good enough for taking a random snap here or there. Also, the video quality is not too bad either. To be perfectly honest, I was expecting this camera to be total garbage, but I really wouldn't say it's that. It seems perfectly serviceable. Just, don't get caught outside taking photos using a 12-inch tablet, that's all I'm saying. When it comes to consuming media, this is a really good device. The chip on board is more than powerful enough to put out high resolution and even 4K video, and it also supports Widevine L1, and that basically means that Netflix will work at full resolution. Devices that don't support Widevine L1 will not be able to play Netflix media either at all, or at the full resolution. So it's really nice to see here. Then there's the power button, which is recessed into the device. This means that you won't be hitting it by accident, but there's also a fingerprint sensor built into it. The fingerprint sensor is very quick and works very well. The only issue I have with the power button is that it can be kind of annoying to take screenshots. However, there's a gesture built into Android where you can swipe with 4 fingers to take a screenshot, so that problem has now been resolved. When it comes to power, in my general testing, the tablet lasts for several days with light usage due to its excellent standby mode. It barely loses any battery overnight whatsoever. And even when emulating heavy games like Kingdom Hearts on PS2, I can expect around 8 hours of battery life. It's incredibly impressive. Back when I reviewed the Tab 12 Pro, my only real complaint with that device was how slowly it charged. But that problem has been completely resolved with the Tab 18. It supports 33-watt fast charging and it is incredibly fast. Just the other day, I was playing a PC game and I had a strategy guide open on the Tab 18. I had the screen permanently on at around full brightness, and when it reached about 15% battery, I plugged it in, and within 45 minutes, it was at 85%. It's absolutely amazing how quickly it charges this massive battery. And with this device, I feel like the battery life is so good and it lasts such a long time. And then when it's low, it charges so quickly, you are never going to be left in the cold with this. It's really, really impressive. Finally, I want to talk about the Android operating system, which they call Doke OS. And this is a mostly stock Android with some really, really thoughtful and intuitive features for tablet use. The first thing is this taskbar-like setup that has an app launcher. You can bring this up with a swipe from the bottom screen, and it can also display over full-screen apps. It will show your recent apps, your favorite pinned apps, and then you can hit the button in the bottom left to bring up a list of all of your apps. The App Manager has been redesigned to have a 2-tier system, and there's a Clear All button right at the bottom that shows your currently available RAM. On top of that, you can hit the 3 dots next to any app and lock it so that it's not closed with that Clear All feature. It's just a really good way to prevent you from accidentally closing an app. The obvious example being that if you're in the middle of a game and you don't want to accidentally close your game. There's also a quick launcher that you can enable from settings that adds a persistent menu to the right side of the screen, where you can quickly access apps. There's also the Doke desktop mode. With this mode, your tablet functions a bit more like a PC, with floating windows that can be resized. And basically every app I tried is compatible, including emulators like Dolphin. I could have Mario Power Tennis up playing a game, and I can also have a notepad open or a timer or something like that. This mode is really suited to a mouse and keyboard, and you can even set it up so that the tablet will automatically switch into this mode when you attach a mouse and a keyboard, and then switch back to the standard mode when you disconnect them. It's really intuitive and actually a really nice way to extend the tablet's functionality. I imagine that with the upcoming keyboard, this will become a really helpful, productivity-based feature. A couple of other quick features here and there is a child lock mode where you can lock out apps so you can give the tablet to a kid, and the opposite, a workspace mode where you can lock out apps so that you don't get distracted from work. And finally, my favorite feature of this implementation of Android OS is split screen apps. Just open up the task manager, hit the 3 dots and tap split screen. You can then select another app to be set as the second app on screen. and then you can pull the center line around to adjust the size of each app. My classic use case for this is to have a strategy guide open on a small area of the screen and my game filling out the rest of it. But you could also use Discord on the secondary screen, or you can have YouTube videos playing. Pretty much anything's possible. And to make it even better than that, if you tap on the center line, you'll get the option to save this app combination as a shortcut. So for example, if you want your web browser and an emulator to always open together at the same time in split screen mode, you can set it up using this shortcut. So that's the Tab 18 from BlackView. Usually at this point in a review, I would give you my list of likes and dislikes. But I'm not going to do that here because there's only really two small things that I dislike. The first being the absence of the 3.5mm headphone jack, which I don't really mind that much to be honest. And the second being that the included case doesn't quite work for propping the tablet up securely. But that could just be a me problem, and it's not necessarily to do with the tablet itself. But outside of those two small quirks, I really can't fault the Tab 18 at all. I think it's a phenomenal device for just home use as a tablet, and incredible for gaming and retro gaming as well. I never thought that I would get anything close to Gamecube and PS2 out of this, but instead I was blown away by its performance. Sure, it doesn't quite hit the heights of being perfect for Gamecube or PS2, it's still really good for a lot of games on those systems. And it absolutely perfectly locks in everything below that. On top of that, you get this incredibly beautiful 12-inch screen that has amazing viewing angles, colors, and detail. You get the great build quality as usual from BlackView, quad stereo speakers that punch way above their weight, and just a whole bunch of other features and quality of life improvements for using Android on a tablet. In my opinion, BlackView really do well at hitting a great cost to value ratio, and they always put out really good value quality products, and the Tab 18 is definitely no exception to that rule. For a substantially cheaper price than basically any other 12-inch tablet out there, the Tab 18 gives you a truly fantastic tablet experience and a really good gaming experience too. This Helio G99 processor, when combined with its 12 gigs of RAM, is really impressive for its tier, and it doesn't leave anything to be desired in terms of general use and gaming. And of course the battery life is amazing, the fast charging is perfect. It's seriously a device that has blown away all of my expectations. And I personally can't wait to buy the external keyboard and stylus myself and check those out in future as well. I've left a link to the Tab 18 in the description box below where you can check it out on AliExpress. If you're watching this close to the launch day, then you might want to know that there's going to be a special price available for the first 500 buyers. But even without that, it's still an incredible tablet for the price that you pay. And in fact, this device is going to stay in my rotation of gaming devices for a long time to come. I want to say a huge thank you to BlackView for sending me the Tab 18 to review. Whereas it was provided to me for review, they had no input on the content of the video, nor have they seen it before it's gone live. And of course, all of the opinions expressed herein are my own. And of course, I also want to thank you for watching this video. I greatly appreciate your time. If you enjoyed it, please go ahead and leave a like on the video and subscribe to RetroBreeze for more content just like this. Also, let me know in the comment box below what you think of the Tab 18 and whether you have a tablet that you love for retro gaming. And with that, that's this one done. Thank you very much for watching RetroBreeze, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.